Hi there, it's August the 4th and we are closing the book of 2nd Chronicles with chapters 35 and 36. They're two very contrasting chapters. Chapter 35 describes the amazing celebration of Passover under godly King Josiah, who has put everything in place for the worship of the Lord. And this celebration of Passover in the 18th year of his reign, on the 14th day of the first month, the normal day of celebrating Passover, is outstanding. It says in the chapter there's never been a celebration of Passover like this since the days even of Samuel, and that's taking into account that when we read of Hezekiah, he celebrated an amazing Passover as well. But this celebration of Passover is according to the Torah, according to the rediscovered law of God. It's according to the writings of David and Solomon. It's all according to the tradition that's been handed down. And not only that, but the king and the leaders of Israel provide the Passover for the people. They are giving them the means of being able to celebrate it. And there's a great deal of feasting goes on, and they celebrate Passover, Pesach, and the days of unleavened bread, the Chag HaMatzot, the celebration of Matzot, the Passover, this following 7 days. And it's an amazing celebration. There are singers put in place, there's worship put in place, particularly linked with Pesach, with Passover, is the singing of the great Hallel, which is the Psalms between Psalm 113 and Psalm 118. All of these things would have been in place, and there's an amazing celebration. But at the end of chapter 35, we see that Judah is now being drawn into the great turmoil that is happening in the Middle East at this time, with the rise particularly of Babylon and Media and the Syrians and the Persians, and they are challenging the power of Assyria. And we see that Egypt is coming into this battle with Babylon versus Assyria. We're not entirely clear historically which side Egypt was going to be on, but Egypt is pulled in under Pharaoh Necho. And Pharaoh Necho is on his way to, and this is around the year 600 BC, and he's on his way to fight the Battle of Carchemish, or get involved in the Battle of Carchemish, which is a great cataclysmic battle which sees the overpowering of Assyria and the rise of Babylon. But on the way, King Josiah, decides to intervene, and he comes out and he challenges Pharaoh Necho. And Necho says, don't bother doing this. I actually have heard, and he actually refers to the fact he's heard from God himself, he's heard from the Lord himself, that this is something he should be doing, that he should be going and challenging the Assyrians. But Josiah nonetheless goes out into battle, and he meets Pharaoh Necho's armies in the valley of Megiddo, in the valley of Jezreel. And it is a big battle there, and Josiah and Josiah is wounded by an arrow, fatally wounded, and he dies. And it says there's great lamentation made for him, and it says that the prophet Jeremiah is involved in this lamentation for Josiah, for Josiah. And coming out of this, chapter 36 is really the description of the final decline of Judah into chaos and into destruction. It starts off with the accession after the death of Josiah of Jehoahaz, his son, and he comes to the throne. But because of the power of Egypt now, Egypt has conquered Judah, and Egypt takes Jehoahaz prisoner and changes Jehoahaz for another king, Eliakim. But also to show their power, Egypt changes his name to Jehoiakim, and Jehoiakim, he reigns, but he's not a good king. He behaves in an evil way. He's then actually taken prisoner by Babylon in turn, and Jehoiakim is replaced with Jehoiachin, and he reigns 3 months, and he's taken to Babylon. So there's these powers coming into play now. Judah is no longer in charge of its own destiny. And Babylon, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, puts in place Zedekiah, to reign instead of Jehoiachin. And Zedekiah reigns for a little while. He is reigning in an evil way. He's not following the ways of the Lord, and he actually rebels against Nebuchadnezzar foolishly. He moves against the power of Babylon. And so the final denouement comes in 586, when King Nebuchadnezzar comes to Jerusalem and completely destroys it. They've already taken many of the temple treasures and many of the goods from the house of the Lord, but now they completely destroy the temple. They completely destroy the walls of Jerusalem. They take Zedekiah a prisoner and take him away. And this is just as, well, remember, Huldah, the prophetess, prophesied this back in the days of Yoshiyahu, and also Jeremiah is prophesying, Jeremiah is prophesying in these days just about these things happening too. And we can read about that actually in the book, as we will do later on in the book of Yirmiyahu, in the book of Jeremiah, where it describes the last days, the terrible things that happened as Judah goes into exile, goes into imprisonment, deported to some to Babylon, some to Egypt, including Jeremiah, who eventually goes down to Egypt with the fleeing Israelites. But it's interesting how the chronicler puts the end of this chapter, the end of chapter 36, he says that this has all happened because the people of Israel, because the people of Judah broke their heart covenant with the Lord, and therefore the Lord takes back his land, and for 70 years he gives the land Sabbath, Shabbat. He gives the land rest. The land should have had its rests, and it's not been treated in the way that God intended it, so God demands, or God will have the land to have its rest. And so for 70 years the land has its rest. And chapter 36 and the whole book of 2nd Chronicles comes to an end with Cyrus the Persian coming to the throne and declaring the restoration of Jerusalem and the restoration of the temple at the end of this book. This whole sorry tale has obviously been prophesied for long before, and also we were told back in the covenant, back in the Torah, back in the covenant with Moses and with Israel, that this land was on loan to them. This land, the possession of this land, or the living in this land, was dependent on their following the Lord. We need to live in the way the Lord calls us to live, because He has called us in such a way that when we live his ways, we live fully human, we live fully fulfilled. When we step out of his ways, we become less than who we really are, less than who we're destined to be. It's amazing that God's covenant continues with Judah, with Israel. He has not repented of his call. He will restore them, but they're going to have to go through this period of intense purification and also being scattered through the nations, so that they carry with them the story of the Lord and of his greatness, and that they can still learn to sing, give thanks to the Lord, he is good, his grace goes on forever. Have a very good August the 4th.